the chance to get his association. So we're hoping now we can hear from him his devotional realizations on the wonderful mercy of Prasadam.
Jayam Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Paribrajacharya Vajrasa Tashi Srimad Kuruchunamani Sava Shastra Siddhantavit Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Vaishnava Brinda Ki Jai. Harinama Sankirtan Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari. So the Mahaprasadam of Lord Krishna, it is always transcendental. We should never think of prasadam as food in the conventional sense, but rather it is the Lord's divine remnants. In the scripture it is called nirmalya, what has been offered to the Lord and left by Him for us. Nirmalya. So we are always to honor prasadam. So the title of this class, honoring Mahaprasadam. So not eating Mahaprasadam or taking Mahaprasadam or having Mahaprasadam, but honoring Mahaprasadam. And Guru Maharaj would often say, Prasad Seva, and Guru Maharaj and Guru Dev also, Prasad Seva. We heard from Guru Maharaj that Professor Sanyal, his devotee name was Narayan Das Adhikari.
Sripad Devashish Prabhu.
And he was, I believe, the principal of Lucknow University. And he was a disciple of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Guru Maharaj said he was the Guru Maharaj said he was the perfect example of a Grihastha devotee. Although he was highly qualified, he was a family man, and being the principal of a university, he was well salaried. But every month when he got his salary, he used to give the full salary to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then Saraswati Thakur would give him something from the maintenance of his family. So Guru Maharaj said this is the perfect example for a Grihastha devotee, because he had so much faith in his Gurudev that he was willing just to live on the remnants that his Gurudev gave him. Even his own salary he didn't consider to be his, he considered it to be his Gurudev's. And Srila Saraswati Thakur would give him something. And what that was, I don't know. But he wasn't concerned with that. He was only concerned with that whatever he had, that would be used in the service of the Lord. Anyway, Guru Maharaj said, most people know him, if you're familiar with a little bit with the history of the Gaudiya mission, as Professor Sanyal, Professor Nishikanta Sanyal. And he wrote a very famous book called Sri Krishna Chaitanya, which was the main book of the Gaudiya Math in the English language at that time. It was a big 2-volume book about the life and teachings of Sri Chaitanya Dev. Anyhow, and Srila Guru Maharaj said he was the best scholar of the whole of the Gaudiya Math. So, one time, Guru Maharaj told us his brother came to the temple, and he asked him, like, what do you do in the temple all day, like, and he said, from what I can see, you just live there and just eat and sleep, and sing some songs and like this. Then and Professor Sanyal said, "No, we don't eat." And he said, "What do you mean you don't eat?" And he said, "No, we don't eat." And he said, "Well, you do, because I've seen you eating rice, dal, chapatis, and so on." He said, "No, we're not. We don't eat. We honor Mahaprasad." And he said, "Okay, well, surely that's just semantics, just." And he said, "No, I can categorically say to you that the devotees of Krishna, they do not eat because there is no mood of consumption. Their mood is purely for service. And whatever they take, that is for the service of the Lord, for maintaining their body, to serve the Lord, and for honoring the remnants of the Lord." So, and he said, so it may look exactly the same as what you do, but it's totally different. Totally the opposite of what you do. So, we hear from our acharyas that Mahaprasadam is the solution to all of our problems. We sing this song every day, right? Sharirara Vidyajal, before taking Mahaprasadam, saying that the tongue is the most voracious of all the senses. And we know that to be so, right? To control the tongue is a very difficult thing. Just to be able to control the urge to just speak whatever comes into your mind, that in itself is very difficult. We all have that tendency. Whatever comes into my mind, I've got to voice it. I have to vibrate that. Whether it's right, whether it's wrong, it doesn't matter. My mind, my ego tells me that it's important enough that everybody must hear that. But and not only that, the other thing that the tongue wants is to taste things. It wants to taste sweet things, sour things, hot things, all the whole variety of things. And we can understand that unless one can control, if one cannot control their tongue, then they cannot control anything. It's first. It's the first principle. So that means to control the urge to speak. They say, if you haven't got anything good to say, then don't say anything. Maybe the Buddhists or someone say that. They say, if what you have to say isn't more beautiful than silence, don't say it. And this urge always to want, new tastes and new experiences. The tongue wants to taste things. And we're mad for that, running all over look at that new Korean restaurant. I wonder what their food tastes like. I've got to go and try that. But actually, those who only live on the Mahaprasad of the Lord, they can conquer the tongue. This is what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying in his song. That you've given us your wonderful prasadam just so that we can conquer our tongue, control the tongue. In yoga, it's understood that because all of the sense organs, they're all in a line, beginning with the tongue, the belly, the genitals. If you can control the tongue, you can control everything. And that means you can be a master of yourself. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that honoring Mahaprasadam is not a matter of gluttony. And I know you're probably thinking that the irony of that statement doesn't fall short. I'm not the slimmest person in the world, but I'm only telling you what I've heard from Guru Maharaj. It's not my realization, but still. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his lecture, or rather his essay, about the temple of Jagannath, there he talks about the Mahaprasad of Lord Jagannath, and it's very beautiful what he says there. He says that the Lord, he has spread all kinds of foods all over the world, all kinds of delicious foodstuffs all over the world, and we find that, right, wherever we go in the world, there's something that you won't find it somewhere else. And you know, all over the world, all kinds of different cuisines and so many things. But he says, and why he's done that, so that his devotees, in their happy and innocent devotion, they'll take those wonderful things and offer them to the Lord for his pleasure. And after they've offered that, then they again happily take the remnants of that as his prasadam. And that means that those very things that the Lord has given us for our enjoyment, we take those things and offer them to him for his enjoyment. And that way they become holy and blessed. And it's a very natural transaction. When I was a child, we and I'm sure all of you had this experience, that when you get some pocket money, and if you use that pocket money to buy some small gift for your mum or your dad and give it to them, it's not your money, it's their money, right? But the very fact that you took that, what they gave you for you to enjoy with, and you use that to buy something to please them, whatever it may be, some simple thing, they're more pleased by that than anything else. My mother's got like a whole shelves full of things that we bought her when we were kids, even today. You know, little chalk dogs and all kinds of silly things that we bought her. Souvenirs from this place and that place. So it's because that's very natural to do that. So when we have that like natural relationship with the Lord, he has given us all of these things. And they're his property already. He's given them to us for our sustenance. But when we take them and try to make them something for his pleasure, and then he reciprocates with us that very same thing, the very same thing which drives our tongue for more and more and more pleasure seeking, you can say, comes under control by accepting that as the Lord's prasadam. And if you can do that in always in a mood of sacrifice and a mood of service, then everything becomes prasadam actually. It doesn't mean necessarily that you have to make it, some formal offering, Take a bag of potato chips and when you pop it open you say a few mantras and it's prasadam or something like that. Is it though? Or is it just that, you want to eat those chips but you don't want to eat boga, so pop them open and does that make it prasadam? Was that to please the Lord? But we heard from Guru Maharaj, one time he said we were traveling and that particular town where we were, there was no dharamshala or any place where we could stay. He's saying there was no place we could stay. We couldn't prepare any food, and the only place in the locality there was one vegetarian restaurant. So we went into the vegetarian restaurant. Guru Maharaj and some of his god brothers, Madhusudan Maharaj, not our Madhusudan Maharaj, but Guru Maharaj's, Bhakti Kamal Madhusudan Maharaj, were there, and some brahmacharis, and they bought something to eat, some sabji, some rice, some dal, and these things. And Guru Maharaj said one of the brahmacharis, he came over to Madhusudan Maharaj. He said, "Maharaj, there's onions in the dal." and Madhusudan Maharaj slammed his fist on the table and he said, "Not to say that about the Mahaprasadam." So when something is done in the mood of service, then the external things aren't so important. You have to eat, right? So, if it is done with heart and with consciousness, then everything will be prasadam. And when we first came to the mott in Navadvip, I was staying there for some time, and Srila Guru Maharaj, he put me in the care of who later became Aranya Maharaj. And at that time his name was Krishna Sharan Prabhu. He was like Guru Maharaj's, not first, but senior most disciple in the temple at that time. And he was, if you know Aranya Maharaj, he was a very sort of idiosyncratic devotee. And he had he was elderly and had a particular mood. And Guru Maharaj said, you learn Vaishnav Sadachar from him. That means like proper Vaishnav behavior. And he told Krishna Sharan Prabhu, Aranya Maharaj, you teach them. And we were very eager to get his approval. We were just young kids, but we were eager to get his approval. So, the first thing he taught us was only eat with your right hand, not to touch the prasadam with your left hand. Because, the Indian system is you wash yourself, with your left hand, so you don't touch the prasadam with your left hand. So, and the first thing he taught us was, when you're taking prasadam, you sit on your left hand. So that you don't, because our habit, when the chapati comes, so sit on it, then you learn to tear the chapati without, with one hand. And it takes a while to learn to do that, but you can do that. Anyway, but if we did anything wrong, he would always heavily chastise us. And his usual chastisement was, when we do something wrong, he would say, therefore, you are a malecha. Until one day, Guru Maharaj heard him telling us that to us. Therefore, you are a malecha. And Guru Maharaj pulled him up on it, and he said, I have accepted them as my disciples. You cannot say they are malecha. Then he didn't say that again to us. But anyway, he taught us many things, and they're simple things, but they're all part of Vaishnav Sadachar. And someone may say, oh, it's just like a cultural thing, it's not so necessary. But if it wasn't so necessary, why did Mahaprabhu ask Rupa Goswami to write a whole book about it, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? And also Hari Bhakti Vilas. These two books, huge works. They're all about Vaishnav Sadachar, and so Mahaprabhu considered those things to be important because it's important how we honor prasadam. So other little small things we were taught. Don't come to prasadam with your bead bag round your neck. That is considered to be disrespectful to the Mahaprasadam and to your japamala. Take it off and put it somewhere respectful, first of all. Don't sit taking prasadam wearing a garland from the Lord, spilling your dal over it or whatever it is. So, and always wash your hands, mouth and feet before taking prasadam. That is, in India particularly. And normally you will take prasadam with bare feet, not wearing shoes. And although we did usually sit on the floor, but sometimes we sat at the table. Srila Govinda Maharaj had tables, and sometimes we sat at the table. And the other thing that you shouldn't do is you shouldn't offer your obeisance to the prasadam after eating. Like bowing down in what is considered your juta, like where you've just eaten, that's considered to be unclean. Then, after you've eaten there, and then you bow down in that place, that's not considered to be proper. You can bow down to the prasadam before, but not at the end. Of course, in one sense, these things aren't so important. It's not the end of the world if you don't know these things, or you tear your chapati with your left hand, or these things. But still, we wanted to get it right, and we wanted the Vaishnavas there who know that culture to accept us, or not be thinking, that's the Malechas. In the time of Guru Maharaj, it was really difficult to get any service in the temple at all. And only after some time, you might be accepted to do some small service there. Because mainly they wanted to serve us, the devotees wanted to serve us. They think, they've come from so far, and, then they wanted to give service to us. But when you were sort of accepted after some time, and you were given some service to do, then you felt like you'd accomplished something. Like when you weren't in the guest area taking prasadam, but you were in the area where the brahmacharis took prasadam, sitting with them, then you felt, okay, now I've been accepted. And one of the first services that I was given to do was to wash the pots after the cooking. And, there's no hot water, first of all, and there's no, washing up liquid, and there's no scrubby pads or nothing like that. And they give you a handful of straw and some ashes and some cold water, and you're cleaning the pots with this. And they have to be clean because they're being used to cook for the Lord. And seriously, what I thought was clean and what they considered to be clean, two totally different things. So and like 6 times those pots were sent back to me. No, not clean. And after the 6th time, I was crying. So, literally, I was crying. I don't know what to do to make give me a Brillo pad, or So, then one of the brahmacharis there, Hari Charan Prabhu, he took pity on me, and he came over to show me how it should be done. And the first thing he did was he took a house brick and he broke the house brick in half. He gave me one half of the house brick and he took the other half, and we scrubbed those pots with a house brick till every little bit of burnt that was on there was gone. And finally, they were clean. We were filthy. A house brick, like a red house brick. So the pots were clean. I was filthy. But, anyway, that's these were some of the things that we learned when we were with Guru Maharaj. And Krishna Sharan Prabhu, he was very strict, super strict. He wouldn't speak after the sun had gone down. Sometimes he would, but if he was in a bit of a mood, which was quite often, after the sun had gone down, he won't speak to you. So you come and say. He was also the quartermaster of the temple, so when it started getting cold in the nights, and I'd go to him one night. I remember going to him and, can I have a blanket, Prabhu? It was really cold. Can I have a blanket? And he was and just walked away. And that night I just shivered on my cot the whole night. And the next morning when I got up, I went, after the parikram and everything, I went and offered my obeisances to him. He went into his room and he came out and gave me a blanket. Anyhow, and Mahaprasadam, it is always transcendental. We heard, and like when I was being trained before that in ISKCON, we heard some things from Srila Prabhupada about that, like things like you shouldn't criticize the prasadam on the day that it's being cooked. If it's too salty or too spicy or something, you shouldn't say anything about it till the next day. Then you can say something. So, actually, what's been offered to the Lord, that also, it's not good to change that once it's been offered to the Lord. So, in whatever state it was offered to the Lord, you should accept it in that way. That's the ideal thing. Not like, it needs a bit more salt, or I'm going to put some brags on that, or, but really, how it was offered to the Lord, if He accepted it, then we should also accept it in that same way. Otherwise, maybe we're, finding fault with it, or we're thinking of it in a mundane way. So we should always try to think. We should always try to think of prasadam as the Lord's mercy, which is, of course, literally what it means. Prasadam means the Lord's mercy. So one of the things that Guru Maharaj taught us was that you should never help yourself to prasadam. You should always request prasadam from a Vaishnava, and if they all mercifully give you prasadam, that will be better. Like just rolling up, I'll have a bit of that, a bit of that. This way, to receive prasadam from a devotee is the better way, a better state of consciousness. Of course, sometimes that's not always practical, but as much as that's the practical thing to do, then we should do that. We should have the prasadam given to us from the hand of a devotee. And you shouldn't think, I don't want to bother them. No, rather, we should think, I want the prasadam from the hand of the devotee. Then it will be prasadam. And one thing I learned, of course, there are rules about prasadam, and they're also different from sannyasis and householders. There's some difference. Like sannyasi is not meant to keep anything like in reserve for themselves, and householder, they should always have a good stock of food in their home for anyone that comes there, to feed them. Actually, that's one of the main duties of the householder, is to feed others, to give Mahaprasad to others. And we heard, I'm sure you know, that Srila Prabhupada, when he started the first community, was it in LA? And they had houses nearby the temple, and that he told them that before you eat, you should go to the door and say, is anyone hungry? Would they like to come and take something? And they took that very literally, so they would do that. And like all the brahmacharis would be hiding in the bushes, all rush out into the house to take this. And also, Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev, he also said a similar thing, is that no one should go hungry within a 10-mile radius of the temple. And one time when, when Gurudev was with us, you see where our temple is in East London, there's a lot of poor people in that area. And sometimes we have like down and outs, they come to the door and, you got any food? They know we give free food, So one time when Gurudev was there, actually Sri Lekha, is she here? Yeah, you remember Sri Lekha, you asked Gurudev, should we be giving it to them? Because they don't have any faith in it being prasad, and isn't it an offense to give prasadam to those that don't have faith?
I asked him, because I had neighbors, and sometimes I thought, well, I'll bring prasadam to the neighbors. I said, sometimes I bring a little prasadam to my neighbors. Is that okay? I don't know what they do with
Right,
it
right.
once I give it to them. And he said, no, don't do that.
So then we asked, and I thought it was you that asked, like this, maybe because of that, like should we be giving it to the like down and outs when they come to the door? And Gurudev's reply was, yes, it is like not. Actually, you shouldn't give prasadam to those that aren't going to honor that in the proper way. He said, but they're hungry, so we're looking the other way. Then some allowance given by the devotees. Maybe they don't understand what it is they're taking. They're just seeing it as food. Of course, devotees are always kind to everybody, and prasadam has some potency. But I remember once, like we've had a guy that's been coming there, like knocking at the door, more or less since we moved in there, like 30 years ago, near enough. And he comes. His name's Tony, and he comes to the door. You got any food? and they give him a plate of prasadam, and he goes up the road. And really, he comes there because he'd rather spend his money on drugs and alcohol, and not have to spend his money on food. When he can get free food So like somebody posted a picture of him on the internet. It said, glorious. Tony coming for the last 20 years to the temple, and I'm thinking, that's not glorious. He's been coming for 20 years and he still hasn't even come in through the door. He's just the food guy that comes there. We would hope that there might have been some kind of transformation by now, but anyhow. But we don't refuse him, even so. So, and many things, some of you remember I used to have a restaurant in London, and I asked Srila Gurudev, is it okay? Should I offer this and then sell it? He said, that'd be nice if it was given them prasadam. And Gurudev said, we cannot sell prasadam, first thing. And I said, okay, what shall I do then? And he said, whatever you cook, you can keep. We had a little Gaur-Nitai deity behind the counter there. He said, whatever you cook, you can offer to them, but don't mix it back in with the other. Once it's been offered, don't mix it back in with what you're going to sell. Keep it separate. So we followed that for all the time since then. It's actually considered sinful to sell prasadam, and in previous times, the idea of a restaurant was considered sinful, because the idea is that everybody should be given food without having to pay for it. That was the idea in cultured civilization. But anyway, we live in Kali Yuga, so things are a little different. But actually everything, as Guru Maharaj always says, everything is existing within consciousness. So if you have the right consciousness, then we can see everything as prasad. That it isn't a ritual that makes something prasadam. It's our ability to see it as the Lord's grace that makes it prasadam. So, and we saw that sometimes, that Srila Gurudev, he would give people things. He's not offering it up to the Lord on the altar and then giving. People giving him stuff all the time, and then he's giving it to others, and the devotees are accepting that as prasadam. One time when we were in Navadvip, and Gurudev, some devotees had come there. They wanted some prasadam from Gurudev, and he had like a box of crackers or something in the cupboard, and so he took some of those and they're saying, "You eat some first, Maharaj." And he was like, "What? What?" "I'm giving to you." And they go, no, you eat something first. And Maharaj was like looking, what? But what comes from the hand of the devotee? Maybe you remember also, I think you were there, Jumanji, when we went to the that castle in Strilki in the Czech Republic. Were you there? Okay. Yeah. Then it was actually called something like Chaitanya Yoga Ashram or something. Oh, Mahaprabhu, yeah, that's right, yeah. But not our Mahaprabhu. But anyway, the lady who was in charge there, she was like a sannyasi. And she had a guru, like a yoga guru, and they were all practicing yoga and like very serious, like about yoga. And they were very nice people, Then, anyway, Gurudev had a really nice room at the sort of the front it was a castle, and we were all we'd all go up and we'd sit with Gurudev to hear him, and one day the lady came, who was in charge of the center there, and Gurudev was talking to her and he was saying, "Oh yeah, yoga is very popular these days," and then he said, just sort of out of the blue, he said, "Do you like chocolate?" And he put his hand in his bag and he brought out like this huge bar of chocolate, like this, sort of this size, which obviously somebody had given to him. He pulled that out and he says, "This is for you." And so she took it, like put it on her head and took it. And then afterwards we were talking with her and she said, "I never eat chocolate," she said, "but I could see that like he's a great saint, then I accepted it as his prasadam." So even she like got the idea from that. And Gurudev was very liberal in that respect. And we know whatever came from his hand, that was Mahaprasadam of the highest type. Whatever it may have been. And we also heard this is a bit of maybe I shouldn't even, no, I'll tell you. Because everybody, they know Srila Sridhar Maharaj is like a very strict Brahmin and Vaishnava and everything, but he told us once, like in one of his very sort of liberal moods, he said, "Sometimes I used to go preaching with Paramahansa Maharaj," that means his godbrother, Bhakti Alok Paramahansa Maharaj. We'd go on the train together, and if we were hungry, sometimes we'll buy the masala muri, the guys that come around, they mix up the rice and, the puff rice and the spices and all of that. And he said, and sometimes they know we're Vaishnavas, so they like left out the onions, because they usually chop red onion in there. He said, so they'd leave that out. And then Guru Maharaj said, "I was always a little disappointed when they left the onions." You didn't hear it from me. But, with their devoted heart, they accepted that as the Lord's prasadam. And this is the main factor. And in Krishna Lila we find that example in the Lila of Krishna and Sudama Vipra. That Sudama, you all know the story, like you've probably told it to your kids, and so many. It's a beautiful story, right? That Sudama was Krishna's school friend, and he was a Brahmin. And then when they both grew up, Krishna was the king of Dwarka. He's got 16,108 palaces and so much opulence, and Sudama, he's a poor Brahmin, and he doesn't even have enough money to buy milk for his children. So then his wife says to him one day, weren't you Lord Krishna's school friend? He said, yeah. I said, you know, he's kind of rich, you know, like Krishna. Then, like, I'm sure if you went to see him, he'd help you out. So Sudama said, you know, like, okay, I'll go and see him. And he said, but I've got to take something like a gift. I've got to take a gift for him. Well, we haven't really got anything. It must be something, right? So they're looking around and they find some flat rice, which, you know, people in India eat that. It's a sort of, you know, you keep it in the store when you haven't got anything to eat, and maybe you mix it with a little yogurt if you got some yogurt, or if you can't afford yogurt, just with water. But anyway, he had this like flat rice, chipped rice, and yogurt, a little bit, and his wife prepared that and wrapped it in a little cloth. You can give this to Krishna. So off he goes to Dwarka, and he arrives at Dwarka. You know, and it's like his cloth is all torn, he's very poor, but, you know, Krishna knows, oh, my friend's coming to see me, my school friend. And everyone knows, right, when Sudama came to Krishna, then Krishna took him into his own living space, his own living room, and sat him on his bed, and washed his feet and massaged him, and Rukmini's fanning him with the fan, and, you know, like giving everything, and of course, you know, Sudama's like overwhelmed by seeing all of this royal opulence, and he's thinking, I've got this bag of chipped rice and yogurt, and he's thinking, I can't give that to Krishna. It's like, it's too much, you know. It's like be an insult to give that to Krishna, you know. And he's got all this, but Krishna says, "Did you bring anything for me, Sudama?" And he says, "No, Lord." And he said, "I think you did. I think you did bring something for me, didn't you?" And finally, he takes that chipped rice, and he takes that. Oh, this is the best I've ever tasted. Anyway, after some time, they part again. But the whole reason that his wife wanted him to go there was to ask Krishna for some help. But I think even before he arrived there, he thought, just to see the Lord again, that'll be so wonderful. You know, like, and after he got there, he just thought, you know, I'm not going to ask him for anything. Just seeing him, that's like my perfection of my life. That's enough for me, you know. So he never asked anything, any help, anything from Krishna at all. But when he got home, where his like beaten down old shack was that he was living in, you know, probably like one of those mud huts you see in India with the thatched roof and the cow dung up the sides, you know, and his, you know, wife and children all wearing threadbare clothes. Where all that was all gone, and there was this like huge palace, like something like Krishna's palace in Dwarka, and there, you know, like his wife, he recognized his wife, but first of all he's like, did I go the wrong? Like, have I come the wrong place? Is this the right place? And who's that? Oh, it's my wife. Like, what? And she's wearing a beautiful sari and beautiful gold jewelry, and the children are. Like, they have everything they want. When Srila Guru Maharaj was commenting on this, he said, we must remember that what Sudama received from Krishna, he received that with his cervix-centric eye. He never received that thinking, woohoo, you know, like party time. But rather, he saw it, as Guru Maharaj says, with the service-centric eye, not with any eye for exploiting that or enjoying that or anything of the kind. So that means that he accepted that as prasadam, as the Lord's prasadam. And everything that comes to us, if we can accept it with a similar kind of attitude, then that'll be prasadam. And as our acharyas, they've written in so many places that we can conquer over this world by living on your remnants alone. So, and that's the essence of what Mahaprasadam is. That whatever you have, if you try to engage that in the service of the Lord and the Lord's devotees, and whatever remains from that, that will be your subsistence. Then that will be perfect. So we see, that's why Srila Guru Maharaj said that Professor Sanyal, he was the perfect Grihastha, because when he got his paycheck every month, he gave the whole thing to his Guru. And what Saraswati Thakur gave him to look after his family, he accepted that as Mahaprasadam. So this is what Mahaprasadam means, actually. And of course, how we live in the world today is different. We don't live in Vedic times or anything like that, so some practical adjustment has to be there. But still, if we can maintain that service-centric vision of everything, then we can see everything as the Lord's prasadam and try to sustain our life on that. Then our life will be a holy life. And it is practical and possible to do that. It just needs an inner adjustment. So rather than seeing everything as for my enjoyment or for my betterment, everything that comes to us, rather we should try to see everything as the ingredients for the service and worship of our Lord. Then everything can be adjusted properly. And we heard, from Guru Maharaj, Srila Govinda Maharaj many times, real religion means proper adjustment with our environment. So it's all about consciousness. It's all about consciousness. It's not about any physical thing, any ritualistic thing, it's all about how we adjust our consciousness with the center. If we can adjust our consciousness with the center, then everything, we'll see everything as a blessing, everything as prasadam, and in this way, as we move and progress in the world, our life will be blessed and holy. So really, we just have to try and do that, and maybe that takes practice, to transform. Because we're so used to doing everything based on me as being the center, or the central principle is about me. Like everyone we meet, everything that comes in front of us, we're habituated to thinking, if I take this thing, is it going to benefit me? If not, I reject it. This person, if I engage in some relationship with this person, will that be beneficial to me? If not, I'm not interested. So it's almost instinctual that we do that. And also we're always very guarded that we're not going to be exploited by anybody. But rather we have to sort of change our vision around in another way. And that is, this thing or this person, how can I relate to them in relation to Krishna? And if we can adjust our consciousness in this way, rather than thinking as an exploiter, they say, it's a dog-eat-dog world, right? So everyone wants to be the biggest dog on the block so that they don't get eaten. But that's a kind of nasty way to live, isn't it? The real way to live is to try to think that everything is meant for him, I'm also meant for him. Then we can adjust our vision But maybe it takes, you have to do that in stages. So Guru Maharaj used to say, you have to practice the hand to give. So if maybe you're a miser, right? You don't like to give anything to anybody. So then give something worthless. Like just give some paper. But make it your practice for your hand to give to others. And if you practice the hand to give, that'll become your habit to give. And to give. And then when you run out of worthless things, then you'll have to give something you consider valuable. And when that's also gone, all those things that you consider to be valuable, when you've given all of that in service to the Lord, and all you got left is yourself, you'll have to give yourself. And that's what he wanted right from the beginning. But so step by step by step, we can transform our lives from the plane of exploitation to the plane of dedication. And that's essentially, that's what the meaning of Mahaprasadam is. Okay, so if anyone has a question, yes, Prabhu.
It's really more a technical matter, but the bhoga that's offered to deities,
Yeah.
What are the standards? Because each temple seems to have, so is Guru Maharaj included? Did they say anything in particular that we should know about that?
Well, that's a very, it's kind of a loaded question, really. Krishna's Rasaraj, after all, right? He's the enjoyer of all kinds of rasa. Then he can enjoy all kinds of food also. It's not that he only enjoys Indian food, or only enjoys food with chilies in it, or in the temple of Jagannath they never use chilies, never, because they're not indigenous to India. I know that might be a surprise to some people, but chili actually came from South America originally. And at the temple of Jagannath, they only offer what's indigenous to India. So you won't find potatoes, you won't find eggplant, you won't find tomatoes, you won't find any of those things, because they were all came from other places. But still, it's the most wonderful prasadam you'll ever take in the Jagannath prasadam. And when we first came to Guru Maharaj, the first thing he asked us was, what kind of food do you like? So he didn't say you've got to eat this, like sabji, rice and dal and all of that. What kind of food do you usually eat? We can see if we can arrange that, And of course, it has to be vegetarian, Then if you're going to offer it to Krishna, it must be vegetarian, and it must be acceptable to the Lord. But otherwise, usually in the temple, there's some sort of standard that we follow. The Lord has particular things that we offer, but that I don't think there's any real hard and fast rule that it has to be sabji, rice and dal all the time, and But as you say, it differs from temple to temple. But the main thing is that whatever we offer to him is pure, and that whatever we offer to him is from the heart. And Srila Gurudev also, he took many things, but what he liked, it was what he liked. There were particular things that he liked, and those that could prepare those particular dishes, he liked that. so then obviously it's obvious that those who knew their spiritual master and knew what kind of things that he liked to eat, they'll also like to offer that to the Lord in their temple. That reminds them of their Gurudev. But it doesn't mean that everything else is off the menu, but it should be pure, and it should be for the satisfaction of the Lord and the satisfaction of the Vaishnavas. We shouldn't just always cook the things that we really like to eat and offer that to Krishna. That's okay, but that may not be pure devotion. But if you want to know, like what would be good to offer to the deity in the temple, just read Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bhoga Arti. Then there's so many things there. Is told what that Krishna likes to eat. So you can't go wrong if you learn how to cook all of those things and offer them to the Lord. You can't go wrong. That some things, like and some things have changed over the years. There are, like strict rules, Vaishnava dietary rules. And we don't really follow those. Actually, there are some things that, you're not meant to eat carrots. Vaishnavas aren't meant to eat carrots. They're not meant to eat red lentils. They're like many different things. Then why red lentils are considered in Ayurveda? Because they're so high in protein, they're considered like meat. But if you don't take red lentils, then you shouldn't take tofu either, because that's even higher protein. Anyway, I want to get into the whole tofu debate. But sometimes Srila Gurudev took tofu, and like in Navadvip they used to make these like soya chunks, and they used to feed that to the cows. And then somehow the devotees, they wanted some of that as well. So they started making that in the sabji sometimes. So anyway.
How about carrots? Why not take carrots?
It's because they're red. There's some thing in Ayurveda that says you shouldn't eat red food.
How about beets? Beets also red.
Yeah, that would probably come under the same category, and probably tomatoes too. But I don't know what all of those laws and things are.
So that's to the deities.
Again, it depends. How strictly you want to follow that. I know here some things that Ramai just won't offer to the deity. I know that, right? And then they add it in late afterwards. But I don't know. I don't think Srila Gurudev was so considered that to be so important.
They've told me I should eat beets.
There you go. So, sorry, Praneshwari.
I want to know if a product, let's say dry apples, the bag is new, it's open, is used to make a preparation on Monday. It's not completely used, you use only half of it, and then you put in the boga, in your fridge, you leave the other part. Next day, you need apples again. It means that you cannot offer because it was used?
No, it depends on when you offer it, what your thinking is. So if you offer it thinking this will all now be prasadam, or if you're thinking this is one ingredient in my preparation and I'll keep the rest for another day, then it's a different thing. But if at the beginning you think this will all be, you understand, it's about consciousness again. Otherwise, that means you'd have to get a whole new spice rack every day, wouldn't you? So,
I was a little bit confused. Okay, now I'm clear.
and there are many things that we learned from Srila Gurudev. Sometimes, like if devotees were traveling, and it meant that they couldn't wait until the offering to travel somewhere, then Srila Gurudev would tell us, as long as whatever you've cooked for the deity, you just put it aside. Maybe it's like not the time for the offering, but you put it in their plate beforehand. Then you can give that to the person, you know. So like according to the time and circumstance. And Guru Maharaj was more. He thought it was more important to serve the Vaishnavas than to serve the deity. So then that kind of exceptions sometimes to the rule like that. And even sometimes Srila Guru Maharaj would make us eat rice on Ekadashi if we were travelling. We never eat rice of our own accord. And even, you know, we were young and fit and healthy. We didn't really need to take rice. But Guru Maharaj would insist, oh, you're travelling today. You're going to need to keep your strength up. You should eat rice. So, okay, Guru Maharaj, if you say so, we'll take rice. So, because that's another thing you need to understand about Mahaprasadam, right? Is that Mahaprasadam can never be touched by sin. So to think that rice on Ekadashi that's been offered to the Lord is full of sin is an offence. If it's been offered to the Lord and it's Mahaprasadam, it is never touched by sin. It is always transcendental. But we honour it the following day to show honour to the Ekadashi. Do you understand? But we will never think that the prasadam has sin inside of it. Normally it's told something like that, right, from the Purana, that on the Ekadashi day, that sin resides in grain. But Krishna doesn't follow Ekadashi. He doesn't fast on Ekadashi. His devotees do, but he doesn't. You can offer rice, you can offer anything. In fact, you can offer more things to Krishna on Ekadashi. We can fast, but he doesn't fast. But normally we honor that prasadam, grain prasadam, the following day. That's the normal rule. But not because we think it's got sin in it. That would be a very big offense to think like that.
One day we were at Radharaman Temple in Vrindavan, and you know, they give out Mahaprasada.
Yeah.
And they took the Mahaprasada from Ekadasi and they had great. Everybody was freaked out. Oh my God, we broke Ekadasi. Oh, and then the people who didn't take it, I will save it for the next day. So.
What are you asking? Who was right and who was wrong?
So it was like, what was the safe position? I mean, according to.
Well, also there's another injunction that when Mahaprasadam comes to you, you should honor it immediately.
Yes.
What's come from the Lord's plate, directly from the Lord's plate, you should honor it immediately, and you shouldn't have any mundane thought about that in any way. So it's not wrong, but it's also not wrong to think, oh, I'll honor it tomorrow. It depends on you, you know. One time when I was in Vrindavan, and in the Banka Bihari temple, they also, you know, they throw out the Mahaprasadam, and they were throwing out Mahaprasadam, and like it just came into my hand, the pan that they'd offered to the Lord, you know, all wrapped up, the betel nut and everything, and like, oh, what do I do with this, you know? And all the devotees I were with, they just said, "Take it, Prabhu, take it." So I took it, and I don't know if that's right or wrong. Normally we don't take that. But it came in my hand, then I just thought, okay, it's the Lord's prasadam, I'm going to take it.
I remember Srila Guru Maharaj being asked that question about pan. Why don't we offer pan?
Yeah,
He said because the devotees don't take it.
right.
So that would be dishonoring Mahaprasada.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we're not going to offer it.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Okay. Any other question, or anyone wants to say anything about that? Okay. Okay. So then we'll if everyone's happy, we'll finish here.